Hi, I'm Pete Cook, and this is episode 8 of the Hydrogen to Human story. And today we're going to answer the biggest question of all. A question which in 1944 Erwin Schrödinger asked in his book, What is Life? Now he thought that quantum mechanics was going to answer that problem. We had Newtonian physics, but that couldn't possibly answer the question of what is life. And the big hope was that when we got the rules of quantum mechanics, that would solve the problem. But in no way can it answer the question. Now, there are 3 revolutions in science, and you don't need any more than 3. First one, Newtonian physics, where we find that laws of physics apply everywhere and they give you predictable answers. That means we can build things like the steam engine and anything mechanical. But as we've seen in earlier programs, mechanics that hold matter together are held together by the magnetism, the properties of the empty space in between that hold this together and hold it apart. And the little entities which have the magnetism, positive and negative units of charge, have no volume or mass of their own. They're just units of energy. So that's revolution number 1, which all turns out to be relativity. Revolution number 2, the rules of quantum mechanics. Now, these rules tell you that an electron will jump from orbit to orbit without passing through the space in between. Now, if you take the electron out of the atom, it will also behave relative to the classical rules. Easy to solve that problem. It's all relativity. When the electron is behaving relative to space, and we saw in earlier programs, there's 2 parts to space, strong and weak space, electromagnetic space, gravitational space. It behaves in the classical way. When it behaves relative to other units, it behaves in quantum behavior. Numbers, whole numbers, it jumps from 1 to 2 to 3. That's what quantum mechanics is. Mathematical behavior. It counts. And as we've seen in all the other programs, the universe can only be described using the laws of physics and the laws of mathematics as a dual complementary partnership. But the third revolution, the revolution that answers all the questions, there's no physics left. I've got quantum physics, and I've got classical physics, and Einstein tells us how the Earth can pull the moon without needing physical structure in between, just the same as the atoms in here pull the other atoms without needing physical structure in between. It's the same principle. And how units of energy, fermions and bosons, act against each other to build atomic nuclei. But they're all just little units of energy. No physical structure, no problem. The third revolution comes in the mathematical behavior, which is all in this book, Chaos and Non-Linear Dynamics. So I've got my 2 parts of physics, quantum behavior, classical behavior, and I put on top of it the mathematics of chaos and non-linear dynamics. Now you'll notice there's 2 parts to the physics, there's 2 parts to this. Sometimes it's chaotical, but still that has a kind of order to it and a mathematical behavior which we understand, and it's also self-organizing. When we look at reality, We see molecules which are self-organizing, and they can't do that just using the laws of physics. We see solar systems which are self-organizing, and you can't do that just using the laws of physics. So let's have a look at these mathematical laws and put them on top of quantum mechanics and classical mechanics, and bring life into a new perspective. If I go back here, the very simple parts of the universe, I see a lack of mathematical components. We've been trying to describe reality without the mathematics, just saying that mathematics comes out of people. But we can't be here unless the matter has these properties of self-organization. That is not in the physics. So the big problem has been trying to describe reality just using the physics. No way, it's never going to happen. So let's tell the story of how I go from the first composite particles, protons and neutrons. And remember my little pattern. I've got a relationship between prime numbers, 2 up quarks, which must be different to satisfy a Pauli's exclusion principle, and 1 down quark. I get a relationship between 2 and 3, and I get a new component in the universe that was not over here. I've got self-generating parts, a composite part, which is holding itself in existence. If I just have 2 quarks, they disappear from existence. Space itself can bubble into a unit of a quark, a matter, an antimatter quark, and then disappear again. It can cancel itself out. So space and matter are 2 manifestations of the same thing, just the same as all the parts down here. The leptons and the quarks are all this dual manifestation of the same thing. It's the only way I can have self-generation. And I get a neutron, which is a reflection of this. Add that to the electron, and I see the same pattern. My 2 parts, 2 down quarks, 1 up one, a neutron, a proton, an electron. And the relationship between the proton and the neutron is what gives me atomic nuclei. And there's a competition here. They attract and repel at the same time. The attractive force, the strong nuclear force, doesn't act over a distance. So when nuclei get too big, the repulsive force, the electromagnetic force, can still act over that distance. And I've got too much mass, so it breaks. Strong nuclear force doesn't win in the end. It breaks, and I break into smaller nuclei. So it's this compete and cooperate at the same time. Then I move on to stars and elements. And again, I see it's a system. What's happening at the gravitational level? Being completely held in existence by what happens at the atomic level, and the generation of new elements caused by the gravity, squeezing them together, overcoming that strong, getting the particles close enough together so the strong force can grab them, but overcoming that electromagnetic repulsion, which gets stronger and stronger and stronger as they get closer together. So this is a system, and the mathematics of what happens here in the middle. There's a ratio, an equilibrium that holds this system in a state of existence. It exists. And when that ratio is all over and done, when the atomic nuclei stop releasing energy at iron, that system dies. We say the death of a star, we say the birth of a star, we say the life of a star. But this is very, very simple. Then we go over from my dualities into my complex parts of reality. At the gravitational level, I get solar systems which are self-generating, self-organizing. And if I try and mess it up, it'll repair itself. They're self-repairing. Now, this seems a very difficult concept for us to understand. It doesn't need anything to interfere, to do that. It can do it all by itself. It's another state of matter, dynamic state of matter, which is very, very complex and only described by the mathematics in books like this. There is no physics describing this. So my simple behavior of matter here, just two parts, the Earth and the Moon, behave to the laws of physics, but they flip over into the same physical components behaving in a completely new way. Newton found that out, and Poincaré started to uncover the mathematics of what's happening here. It's still using the laws of physics, the atomic laws and the gravitational laws acting against each other to build the stars and the planets, but the behavior is purely mathematical. And at the atomic level, we see the mathematics in the molecules, which flip over into repeating cycles. I must have repeating cycles to conserve information in my systems. Only two kinds of complex systems. One requires the conservation of energy, the other the conservation of information. And I need repeating feedback cycles. And then at the atomic level, my system can go on just becoming more and more complex and diverse. So I need to put energy into my living system. I have to put energy in, a lot of energy, so that I can self-generate, self-govern. These systems are self-governing. They have ratios which hold them in states of equilibrium. So a system of lions and buffalo, if the lion can eat all the buffalo, the whole system goes, they all die. But something like a typhoon can just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not self-governing until I switch off the energy supply. Self-replicating, self-repairing, self-organizing. That all starts to happen in life. So this is what life is. It's a system of atomic entities holding itself in existence. And when I feed energy in, it can just repeat itself. This is the Krebs cycle. This is the energy cycle based upon glucose. And all of life is based upon glucose. That energy store which I can then use to power my little atomic system. And it's all held in balance. And I just keep adding to it and adding to it. Now what happens here is we're not behaving relative to the laws of physics. That just builds the parts. All systems do all this by behaving relative to each other. The parts just behave relative to each other. All the planets and the sun behave relative to each other. The atomic parts behave relative to each other. And I see that here in the symmetry of these molecules. Now, that's what symmetry is. The parts behaving relative to each other. That's the mathematics and relativity all being mixed up to give me a description of reality which is the same as I observe. So that's what life is. Complex dynamic systems which conserve information and hold themselves in existence. So that's what my body is. It's both a classical object that responds to the force of gravity. It's atomic entities that attract and repel each other. And it's a complex dynamic system in which all the atomic parts inside the cell behave relative to each other, build themselves into a complex system, and then I add on to that the same behavior again with cells acting against other cells, building systems, and then systems acting against other systems, until I get two parts. I go right back to the beginning. I end up with two different parts, two manifestations of the same thing, a mind and a body, which both need each other. There's interdependence between them. And it dies when the systems, when one of the systems systems in my body goes, all the other systems go. The interdependence is lost. That's what death is. That's what life is. Life is interdependence between the parts. Thanks very much. See you next time. Part 9.